Welcome to the chapter on Introduction to Small Island Developing States. My name is Asela Patirna, and I will be joining you along with my colleagues Atish Malal and Amit Singh.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Asela. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Small Island States Introductory Course. My name is Atishma Lal, and I am from Fiji. I work for a regional organization called the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, based in Fiji.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Professor Asela. Hello everyone, welcome to the Small Island States Introductory course. My name is Amit Singh and I'm from Fiji. I work for a regional organization called the Pacific Community, in short SPC, based in Suva, Fiji.
Small Island Developing States or SIDS are a group of countries characterized by their small size, island or coastal location, and vulnerability to environmental hazards. These states face specific challenges in achieving sustainable development. The definition of small islands include geographical, geopolitical, environmental, and economic factors. According to the United Nations, these are principally sovereign states and territories located within the tropics of the southern and western uh, Pacific Ocean, the central and western Indian Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, the eastern Atlantic off the coast of West Africa, and the more temperate Mediterranean Sea. 57 small island developing states include 39 states and 18 associated members. Small islands are characterized by geographical remoteness and isolation, a narrow resource base, heavy dependency on external trade, vulnerability to exogenous shocks, economic volatility, and limited access to finance. They are often biodiversity hotspots and experience a disproportionate impact of natural hazards associated with the climate change. Geography of small island developing states. This slide shows the locations of SIDS on the world map. SIDS are grouped into three geographical regions: the Caribbean, the Pacific, and the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and South China Sea region. Small islands can be categorized based on their geological origin. Continental islands were connected to a continent at some point in time. Volcanic islands formed from volcanic activity, and reef islands or atolls are often based on volcanic islands where coral reefs have developed. Composite islands like Papua New Guinea have a mixed geological origin.
Next, we move to international diplomacy and geopolitics related to small island developing states. Important international milestone for seats, starting from the Rio 8 summit in 1992. These milestones include the Barbados Programme of Action, the Mauritius Strategy, the Samoa Pathway, and the Glasgow Climate Pact in 2021. The most recent is SIDS 4, which concluded on 30th May 2024 in the Antigua and Barbuda. The outcome of the SIDS 4, referred as the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, or ABAS, a renewed declaration for resilient prosperity, is a comprehensive plan of action that offers solutions to the unique challenges of SIDS, as well as a new 10-year framework for international cooperation and support. ABAS outlines its priorities and ambitions to build resilient economies, foster safe, healthy and prosperous societies, ensure a secure future, and achieve environmental protection and planetary sustainability with international support.
There are two key concepts to look at when it comes to climate justice for seeds. The first one, the special circumstances of seeds. The special circumstances of seeds refer to the two linked concepts, and these are the first one, the geographic and economic characteristics of small island developing states, and the legal principles that recognize the capacity constraints as a result of the physical characteristic. Building on references to developing countries vulnerable to the effects of climate change in the Rio Declaration, Principle 6, and the UNFCCC Preamble, Article 4.8a, and the Paris Agreement recognizes the special circumstances of seeds in 5 paragraphs of the Paris Agreement. And these basically deals with the flexibility in transparency, uh, on easier access, procedures for climate finance, and on priorities for climate finance and capacity building. The second principle is the common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, what is normally called the CBDRRC. Common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities is a principle within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that acknowledges the different capabilities and differing responsibilities of individual countries in addressing climate change. Why it is important for seeds? This has led to dedicated seats for seats on governing boards, which would not normally get through the UN regional grouping because seats are often split between the RULEC, Africa, and the Asia Pacific group. Let's explore these articles in bit detail. Article 4.6 states the least developed countries and small island developing states may prepare and communicate strategies, plans, and actions for low greenhouse gas emissions, reflecting their special circumstances. Article 9.4, the provision of scaled up financial resource should aim to achieve a balance between adaptation and mitigation, taking into account country driven strategies and priorities and the needs of developing parties, especially those that are particularly vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change and have significantly capacity constraints such as least developed countries and small island developing states, considering the need for public and grant-based resource for adaptation. Article 9.9. The institutions saving this agreement, including the operating entities of the financial mechanisms of the Convention, shall aim to ensure efficient access to financial resources through simplified approval procedures and enhanced readiness support for developing island countries, in particularly for the least developed countries in the small island developing states, in context of their national climate change strategies and plans. Article 11.1. Capacity building under this agreement should enhance the capacity and the ability of developing country parties, in particular countries with the least capacity, such as the least developed countries and those that are particularly vulnerable to adverse effect of climate change, such as small island developing states, to take effective climate change action, including to implement adaptation and mitigation actions, and should facilitate technology development, dissemination, deployment, access to climate finance, relevant aspects of education, training, and public awareness, and the transparent, timely, and accurate communications of the information. Article 13.3. The transparency framework shall build on and enhance the transparency arrangement under the convention recognizing the special circumstances of the least developed countries and small island developing states and be implemented in a facilitative, non-intrusive, non-punitive manner, respectful of national sovereignty and avoid placing undue burdens on parties. Now let's examine why special circumstances of seeds is contested. The Africa and Independent Alliance of Latin America and Caribbean have pushed against this principle for years. This is usually because ILEC, wanting recognition for middle-income countries, has been strongly opposed to Africa, wanting recognition for non-LDC African states being recognized if they are not. Each year, this issue is postponed after consultations with the COP president. However, at COP28, Africa and ILEC has actively opposed including these special circumstances in negotiating text, a move that was strongly contested by the Alliance of Small Island States or IOCs. At SB60, it is a hot topic of discussion in almost all thematics. IOCs have stated this as non-negotiable and would not agree to any text that undermines this principle for seeds.
Three regional organizations support Pacific Small Island Developing States in climate negotiations. The Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, or PIFS, which is the region's premier political and economic policy organization, has 18 Pacific Islands member countries and the headquarters is in Suva, Fiji. PIF's ambition is that all Pacific people remain resilient to the impacts of climate change and disasters and are able to lead safe, secure, and prosperous lives. In addition, the region continues to play a leadership role in global climate action. The Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Programme, OSPREP, headquarters is in Apia, Samoa, has 21 Pacific Island member countries and territories, which focuses on protecting and managing the environment and natural resources of the Pacific. The third one is the Pacific Community, OSPC, headquarters is in Numia, New Caledonia, has 22 Pacific Island member countries and territories, which is the principal scientific and technical organization in the Pacific region. The 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent is a long-term strategic policy framework for the Pacific, which got endorsed in 2022 Forum Leaders Meeting. The 2050 strategy will drive and deliver together for the benefit of all Pacific people. It focuses on 7 thematic areas, including political leadership and regionalism, people-centered development, peace and security, resources and economic development, climate change and disasters, ocean and environment, and technology and connectivity. The 2050 Strategy Implementation Plan, or 2050 IP, is the first phase of this strategy, setting specific goals and actions to achieve the long-term vision by 2030. As mentioned earlier, the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent focuses on 7 key areas. This strategy aims to ensure that Pacific people can lead free, healthy, and productive lives by addressing these interconnected areas.
Economies of small island developing states. Small island developing states face unsustainable debt levels, urgently needing support to avoid economic defaults. This graph illustrates the public debt and the current account balance of various small island developing states as of the year 2018, with bubble sizes indicating the debt service relative to the government revenues. For example, Jamaica has a debt service ratio of 21.5. Immediate action and comprehensive debt relief are crucial for these vulnerable states to manage their financial challenges and ensure sustainable development. SIDS were hit hardest by the global financial crisis of 2008-2009. The graph shows the GDP growth rates from year 2000 to 2015, highlighting a significant drop during the crisis, even compared to other developing countries. This demonstrates their vulnerability to global economic shocks. COVID-19 pandemic significantly worsened the debt situation of many small island developing states. These countries had to increase borrowing to manage the crisis, leading to high debt levels and financial stress. According to Resca and colleagues in 2021, SIDS needs strategic approaches to move forward, particularly in sectors like tourism that were heavily impacted by the pandemic. Tourism is a crucial economic sector for many cities, contributing significantly to their GDP and employment. Share of tourism in total GDP is quite high in small islands like the popular tourist destinations of Maldives and Seychelles. The tourist arrivals often exceed the local population in many small islands. Tourism accounts for a substantial portion of total exports for many small island developing states, sometimes reaching a value as high as 80%. Here's the data on export diversification measured by the number of markets reached by each group of countries. SIDS as a group show lower diversification compared to even least developed countries. In the previous slides, we discussed the economy of SIDS. This exposed some of the vulnerabilities of these nations. Let us explore the vulnerability of SIDS a bit further. The term island paradox describes how small islands face high vulnerability to external shocks while also experiencing relative prosperity, particularly as sought after tourist destinations. Environmental pollution remains one of the biggest vulnerabilities of SIDS besides climate vulnerability. Dumping of single-use plastics and untreated sewage are examples. While the local contribution of SIDS to the global pollution problem can be small, they suffer disproportionately from the impacts, just like the climate change impacts. Degradation of sensitive ecosystems and impact on tourism are some examples. A multidimensional vulnerability index (MVI) has been proposed to assess the vulnerabilities of SIDS. This index covers economic vulnerabilities, structural development vulnerabilities, and environmental vulnerabilities, including exposure to climate risks and natural disasters. Championing for a more comprehensive assessment of a country's well-being, SIDS opened up the path to the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. The 2024 report on MVI uses this index to cover most of the developing countries. Here is a screenshot of the MVI dashboard of the United Nations. We have been discussing how SIDS countries were key to the introduction of the Multi-Dimensional Vulnerability Index. So it is important to remember that the SIDS story is not all negative. These countries have disproportionately impacted the global politics in the context of climate change mitigation, pollution prevention, human well-being, and climate adaptation.
Let's look at some notable achievement of SIDS over the recent years. First, we will look at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, ITLO's opinion. On May 21st, 2024, the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea delivered a long-awaited advisory opinion on climate change and international law. This marks the first time that an international tribunal has issued an advisory opinion on state obligations regarding climate change and mitigation. The advisory opinion addressed several key questions regarding application of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the UNCLOS, in the context of climate change, including the interaction between UNCLOS and the global climate change regime and the specific obligations of the states to reduce climate damaging greenhouse gas emissions. Among other things, it was concluded that state parties to the convention have a specific obligation under Article 194 of UNCLOS to take all necessary measures to prevent, reduce, control marine pollution from anthropogenic GHG emissions and to endeavor to harmonize their policies in this connection. The tribunal also emphasized that Article 194 Para 1 of UNCLOS imposes a due diligence standards on a state that is stringent. This is a huge win for SIDS, especially SIDS science, and will frame future climate-related ruling, example, the ICJ advisory opinion. Now let's look at the ICJ advisory opinion requested by Vanuatu. On March 29, 2023, the UN General Assembly resolved to seek an International Court of Justice advisory opinion on the state obligations regarding climate change. This initiative, started by Pacific Island law students, aims to hold polluting countries accountable for their actions. The International Court of Justice is examined how climate change inaction is affecting human rights of people and will provide legal clarity on how states should address it. While not legally binding, an advisory opinion of such holds great legal weight and moral authority. This shall shape future climate discourse, especially duty of parties in respect to climate change. Now let's look at how SIDS have been instrumental in pushing for the establishment of the L&D Fund. The Loss and Damage Fund, first proposed by Vanuatu in 1991, was agreed upon on the first day of COP28 in Dubai last year. With USD 661 million committed, this fund aims to provide financial assistance to countries affected by climate change. The small island Pacific country of Vanuatu has achieved so much on global scale. The 30-year-long journey for SIDS and it's a legacy for Vanuatu, and a testament that SIDS have actively engaged and influenced global discourse on climate change. Vanuatu and Tuvalu are leading efforts towards a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty aimed to hold further fossil fuel production. Notably, COP28 marked the first time transition away from fossil fuel was included as a COP negotiated outcome. There is absolute commitment from PACIDs to achieve this in near future. The fourth International Conference on Small Island Developing States, commonly known as SIDS4, took place from May 27th to 30th, 2024. Under the overarching theme of charting the course towards resilient prosperity, the conference aimed to assess the ability of SIDS to achieve sustainable development, including the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. The conference concluded providing unanimous support for a bold new 10-year plan of action that will deliver meaningful change for this group of vulnerable countries.
We have covered the following topics. What are the small islands and SIDS? Geography and geology of SIDS, international diplomacy and SIDS, their economics, their vulnerability, and their achievements and the future.